All right, sorry about that, guys. Got cut off. So as I was saying, American women living along the frontier uh, still had to adhere to societal norms. A lot of the farming practice that is going to take place along the frontier in Kansas, Nebraska territory, and farther west is sustenance farming. People were growing what they needed. You're far less likely to see plantation agriculture west of the Mississippi River, although slavery did exist in places like Missouri, Arkansas, and then later Kansas, Nebraska has its whole issue, which we will discuss in the next unit. But it was more likely to find a smaller farm. A lot of this westward expansion is driven by Manifest Destiny, but it is also influenced by government spending. The United States of America focuses on building a national road, which is the first highway that kind of connects the Ohio River Valley to eastern markets. Canals also help speed up the pace of westward expansion. And so it's driven, Manifest Destiny is not only an American ideology that is in the heart of white America, it is also something that is being invested in and spent on by the U.S. House of Representatives, Senate, and the executive branch. So we're going to transition here, and we are going to talk about Texas. For whatever reason, College Board puts especially important influence on the state of Texas, which, whatever. It's the Lone Star State, so I guess it gets its own little special part here. But let's talk about Texas. So Texas is the original state of Texas was the state of Mexico. Now, the Mexican government encourages white settlement in the territory or state of Texas. And so Americans start to move into the Mexican state of Texas. Now, when these individuals are moving in, they're in large part coming from the South, and in large part they're bringing their slaves with them. The one major problem with that is in Mexico, slavery is officially outlawed. So Texas goes through its own little revolution, which we are not really going to cover all that much, the Lone Star Rebellion. But
remember the Alamo.
Yeah, the Alamo, boom, Davy Crockett, somebody has a big knife, something like that. And so it becomes an independent nation. Now, the Europeans take a lot of interest in Texas. It'll stop American growth. It'll oppose the Monroe Doctrine, which we're going to talk about. But probably the most important thing, and this all kind of goes back to how important cotton was in the 19th century, was that they would be able to use the state of Texas as a competitive market against American cotton. And so obviously the United States of America takes interest. And in 1845, the U.S. House of Representatives votes to annex the state, or the, I guess, country of Texas, to make it a state. And so in 1845, Texas becomes an American state. And as a result of that, Mexico breaks off its diplomatic relations with the United States, all but ensuring that those two nations are going to go to war.
All right, guys. So as Mr. Vieira alluded to, the fact that the United States had backed its own people in the Texas Revolution, and then ultimately annexed Texas into the part of the United States, Mexico was going to fight over that because they did not see that as a legitimate takeover of Texas by the people that had won during the Texas independence movement, nor by the Americans. So we really have kind of reluctance on both sides in Mexico and in the United States to go to war. But we have President Polk, who is kind of a warmonger. He wants to make a name for himself. He wants to kind of have, he's certainly very steeped in this idea of manifest destiny and American exceptionalism and American power. And so what he does, really to invoke Mexico into starting a war. He sends a small force into Mexico under General Zachary Taylor. And remember that name, that's going to be one of the many names that we'll be introduced to that we'll learn more about or look more at during the Civil War. And it sends them into Mexico, and we have some kind of border skirmishes. There we go. I don't know. Skirfs is not a word. You'll not find it on your key terms. Skirmishes. And so war is declared in 1846, and we have not a lot of battles, but and as the text points out, more people, more fight, more troops died of disease than they actually died of combat. But what the Mexican-American War really results in is the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo, which basically forces Mexico to hand over pretty much the northern half of their territory and what we think of as pretty much the rest of the United States, aside from the Oregon Territory. Up in the Northwest. And so that gives the United States California, New Mexico, and the border of the Rio Grande, Arizona, and other states like that. And so just put that in your head that the introduction of these new states and where they're located is really going to cause more divisions, just like we saw in Missouri, over whether or not these states should be pro-slavery or free. And so just kind of keep that in your head there. Okay, so here we just see movement out into the West. And so we're starting to see these different portions of what will become the United States, the continental United States at least. And we'll see when they become part of the U.S. And you guys will work on that this week as well. Okay, so California is known famously for its gold rush. And in 1848, gold is discovered on John Sutter's sawmill. And after that, word just spreads really quickly east and really throughout the world. And we have just massive amounts of people migrating to California in search of gold. The placer deposits, or the surface level gold that was available, dried up pretty quickly, and most miners find nothing. But what it really does is it makes California, really starts to set California on this stage to be one of the leading economic and populated states that it is today. At about 95% of the immigrants are single men. We have a lot of crime, as you can imagine, a lot of young men that are bored and not really realizing the glory that they thought they would be finding in the gold fields, then have to kind of strut their stuff and flex on other people. So
I have a nerdy
let's get it.
Story. So many of the people that came to the gold rush, they went through San Francisco right here, right? Okay, obviously everybody in California knows where San Francisco is. And many of the men that came were not dressed appropriately to mine for gold in Sierra Nevadas, much less the foothills. And so there was a shortage of mining appropriate clothing. This one gentleman realizes that there's all sorts of ships that are in San Francisco Harbor, because most people would just come into San Francisco Harbor, abandon their ship, and just go up and mine gold. And so what he does is he starts cutting down all the sails, and he starts hemming pants out of them. And these
cotton
pants,
sales.
Yeah, these pants sell like crazy. That guy's name is Levi Strauss. And so the Levi's that most of you guys wear to school all day that we see are literally, that guy started his business by robbing people. But that relates directly to what we're kind of going over here. Levi Strauss pretty much stole from people, made jeans, and now you're all wearing illegal clothing.
And just like Levi Strauss finds his wealth in that, that's really who got really rich during the gold rush, was the merchants, the people that opened up shop to provide for all these people that are coming in for mining, food, materials, all those different aspects. So those are the merchants are the ones that really strike gold during the California gold rush.
So just to wrap up on California, because we're going to punt California down to 1850, which we'll talk about in the next unit when we talk about slavery. But California Constitution, which is, fun fact, also written in English and Spanish, bans slavery in the territory. And so California will not be added as a state until they resolve the issue of slavery and how California is going to be counted as a free state or as a slave state. So again, here you go. Some parts of our state, which I'm sure some of you have traveled to, maybe you have family living in those areas, but most of the gold that's found in California is found north of our current location in the Sierra Nevadas. And you can see Sutter's Mill right there, northeast of Sacramento. So we'll talk about Manifest Destiny very briefly, the global ramifications of it. So the one key thing is the Monroe Doctrine. In 1821, the Secretary of State John Quincy Adams gives this speech to the House of Representatives, And in it, he outlines the Monroe Doctrine. James Monroe was the president at the time, not John Quincy Adams. And Quincy Adams